It has been 28 days since this girl's pre-lay shed. She's about to lay any day now. Before continuing, I have to tell you, I messed something up. This is supposed to be an egg pulling video. I got everything on film except for the actual egg pulling part. I simply didn't hit record, but by the time I realized that, I had already gotten the female off the eggs and into a separate tub. I put the eggs into the egg box. I look over at my phone and the screen was blank, or it was actually black. So I know it had turned off by itself because I didn't actually hit the record button. Well, I wasn't about to put the female back on just to do another take. Here you see how I go about giving the female a quick bath. And the point of this is just to wash off the egg scent so she'll hopefully start feeding soon. This tub that she's in is not her original tub. It's a new tub on a different level within the rack. And I put in about 2 gallons of warm water. The water is not as warm as, say, your bath water. It's actually cooler. And she'll sit there for a few minutes just to help her relax. And by the way, I did make sure that all the eggs are out of her. Something about albino pieds that isn't in my favor this year. I'm just not sure if it's bad luck or something to do with double recessives. And here's what I mean. Look at these beauties. Hashtag sarcasm. These are actually slugs. 4 ugly slugs. Now you understand my frustration. I felt 6 follicles while she was developing. So being that there's 4 slugs here means that I got 2 eggs. And here they are. The condensation is already collecting on the walls of the egg box, so I apologize for the distorted view. I don't want to mess with them at all. I got 1 normal looking egg and 1 boob egg. The boob egg is the one on the left. I did candle both of them for veins, but I didn't rotate them at all. How they're laid is how they're set into the egg box. So that's it. Wish me luck on this one, guys. I'm going to calculate 3 scenarios. With this pairing, I really want to know what are my chances of getting an albino, what are my chances of getting an albino pied, what are my chances of getting a pied. So in order to calculate that using my method, not the Punnett square, but Punnett square works just as well. Using my method, I just want to list out all the genes that are in this pairing. So I know the male, with this male, he is a visual albino. And since albino is recessive, and to be visual, that means he has to have 2 copies of the albino gene. So I'm just going to write 2 lowercase a's to represent the albino gene. He's also het for pied. Because he's het, that means he's only got 1 copy of the pied gene. So I'm going to put a lowercase p there. Now that's all I'm doing for the male. For the female, she is a visual pied. So that means she has to have 2 pied genes, because pied is also recessive. And to be visual, she has to have 2 recessive. To be visual, she has to have 2 copies of the pied gene. Now, the last gene is questionable. This is what I'm trying to prove out. Does she have a single copy of the albino gene? If she does, that means she is 100% het for albino. And if she doesn't, that means she's just pied. So this is what I'm trying to prove out with the 2 eggs that I received from this pairing. So what are the 3 scenarios again? Well, I'm going to try to figure out my chances of getting a pied hatchling, or I should say my chances of getting pied hatchlings, and my chances of getting albino pied hatchlings, and my chances of getting albino hatchlings. So to calculate this using my method, really simple. If there's 2 of the same gene, in this case it's recessive albino, right? So he's got 2 copies of the albino gene, but it wouldn't be any different if it was a super pastel. You would just have 2 S's. But anyway, if there's 2 copies of the same gene in the same animal, you just have to put a 1. Actually, let me back up because I didn't want to calculate this the albino, so I'm gonna just cross those out. We're looking for pied, so because we're looking for pied, we only focus on the columns that have the lowercase p. So in that case, let me start with the female down here. Because she is a visual pied, she's got 2 copies of the pied gene, and what I was saying is if there's 2 copies, then it doesn't really matter. You can just put a 1 in each of these cells. Same thing if it was a super enchi, super pastel, super fire, ivory, which is a super yellow belly. If there's 2 of the same, you just have to put a 1 in each of those cells. Now for the male, he's only got 1 copy, and that means I have to put a 2. So what's the rationale behind putting a 1s down here and a 2 up here? Well, because the chances of passing one of these genes to an offspring is 100%. 100% guaranteed that one of these genes are going to get passed to the hatchlings. Up here, because he's only got 1 of these genes, there's only a 50% chance of that getting passed down to the hatchlings. So that's why I put a 2. Alright, so now all I have to do is just multiply all the numbers in this column. So we just have a 2, so there's nothing really to multiply. In that case, I'm just going to put a 2 down here. Now this is always going to be the denominator. Whatever product comes out of these values is always going to be the denominator, and the numerator will always be a 1. So we got 1/2 here, which equates to 50%, which equates to 1 out of 2 eggs. So I have 2 eggs. That means of those 2, I can expect 1 to be a pied, and the other one is just something else. So over here, let's calculate the odds of hitting an albino pied. So now we got to look at both the albino and the pied gene. Let's start with the albinos first. So because this is a visual albino as the father, 100% of the time he's going to pass down one of these genes. I'm going to put an A there. As for the pied gene, again, same situation over here. He's only going to be able to pass it down 1/2 of the time. So I'm going to put a 2 there. Down here, the pied gene, same as before, she's going to be able to pass that down 100% of the time. This child or the hatchling will at least receive one of those, guaranteed. And assuming she is an albino, or sorry, assuming she is het for albino, and we need this albino gene to get passed down, she can only pass it down 1/2 the time. Therefore we put a 2. So what is the product of this? Well, 2 times 2 equals 4 as the denominator, and again, numerator is always a 1. So this equates to 25%, or we can say 1 out of 4. Now obviously I don't have 4 eggs, so but that doesn't mean I won't hit an albino pied, because this is just statistically speaking. It is not telling the future. It is a prediction, but it's not future written stone. So having seen this gives me an expectation, right? So my expectation would be one of those eggs is going to be a pied. My expectation here is I should be prepared to not see an albino pied in this clutch at all, because it's 1 out of 4 eggs. But you know, if the odd gods are with me, there is a chance, because this is just statistics, but in reality, or when that day happens, when I'm cutting the eggs, there is a chance that both eggs could be albino pied. Well, Anyway, let's move on to the last scenario. Let's calculate for the chances of being albino, because I really want to know from this, I really want to know if I have a chance of proving out the female to be an albino. Sorry, I keep saying that. I want to know the chance of being able to prove this female out to being a het for albino. So let's look at all the rows that have A's. So again, the father is 100% of the time going to pass down at least one of these genes. And down here, let's say or assume that she is albino, het for albino. I keep making that mistake, I know. Het for albino, so that means she's only got half the chance of passing this down. Taking the product, you get a 2. 1 is the numerator. So looking at this, I know that statistically I would be fine with just 2 eggs, because based on this, one of those would be an albino. And if I do hit on that, then I could conclude the female to be het for albino. But that might not be the case. That might not be reality when that day comes and I cut open the eggs. The other scenarios that could happen, just to give you some, right off some examples, I could get 2 classics. I could get 1 classic and 1 pied. I could get 2 pieds. So if I don't see any albino, then I'm still going to consider her as a possible het for albino, just because there really isn't enough eggs in this clutch to conclude that she is not het for albino. But if I hit 1 hatchling, at least 1 hatchling is all I need, I would conclude her to be a het for albino. So just a basic understanding of genes. You don't have to calculate it this way. You can just use, you know, a morph calculator or genetics calculator on the internet, where you can use Punnett squares. I like to do it this way, but the point is just a basic understanding of genes and how to calculate them, and knowing the statistics. That helps to guide your expectations. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like, hit that thumbs up. I'll see you guys next time.